In the rain?
Well, I'm just, we
Sure.
know, we realize,
From where we are,
had to
yeah.
add it, or do we go out that door?
Allen's?
Do we go out that door? Do we go out?
I think you go out that door.
I think you go out the closest door, so.
So
yeah.
we'll say muster at the tennis
Same.
courts?
Or, yeah.
Okay, how's that?
Underneath the
In the rain?
Well, I'm just,
at the turbine.
where's the flag? Oh, there it is, way back.
Steve, let me just check the stream and then I think we should be good.
Okay, thanks. Let everybody in.
Ah, you look like you're at Oxford. Library.
Reagan Airport.
YouTube's live. We're all set, guys.
Okay, let me let everybody in. Okay,
You have one in the waiting room?
one in the rain. She's coming in now. She's joining us.
Okay. You ready?
Yep.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Portsmouth School Committee meeting of Tuesday, October 13th. Would you please rise and join me in a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence for our troops in harm's way. The flag is at the back. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We had an executive session prior to this meeting. No votes were taken. Can I have a motion, please, to seal the executive session minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Mr. Vadney?
Aye.
Mr. Shears?
Aye.
Mr. Payero?
Aye.
Mr. Ferber?
Aye.
Emily Copeland? Aye. Unanimous 6-0. Please let the record reflect that all council members, school committee members are present. Ms. McDade's joining us virtually and 6 are in person. Because we are now meeting in person, we also have to go back and do our emergency evacuation plan. So we exit through the nearest door and we muster over at the tennis courts. The next thing on the chair's remarks is that we have received communications from our collective bargaining units. That is AFSCME, Rhode Island Council 94, and the Portsmouth Teachers Association, NERI, NEA, both of which have requested that we commence the collective bargaining process. The receipt of letters is the first step. And now Mr. Vadney, as chair of the negotiations committee, and Dr. Kenworthy, will leave it up to you to kind of set the schedules and move that process forward if that's acceptable. So thanks to the unions for getting those letters to us so that we can begin this process. We have a lot of bargaining to do this year. The last thing on my remarks is at the last meeting, the town council, I'm just going to share this right here so everybody can see it. The town council adopted their process for how they're going to replace the school committee member with Ms. Holtman's vacancy and resignation. So I would just like to make anybody aware who's interested. Any Portsmouth resident can apply as long as you're not an employee of the school system. And I think the town as well, right? Or is it just the schools?
Yeah. And a registered elector.
And you have to be a registered elector. Okay, thank you. So the applications are due November 13th, and all you need to submit is a resume and a cover letter. The questions are listed right there and on the screen. And Dr. Kenworthy, I think you said you were going to post this,
We'll
have
put it
this
on our
posted on
website.
the website, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure that announcement will go out to the Portsmouth community, and I just encourage anybody who's thinking about doing it to do it, because it's a really valuable way to give back to your community and help ensure a good education for the kids of Portsmouth. So, all right, that concludes my chairperson's remarks. Subcommittee updates, racial equity, Mr. Payero.
Thank you. The Equity and Social Justice Subcommittee met, 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, in order to discuss our organizational structure, but really aligning our district and other priorities that have already started to take place across the district, especially here at the high school with Crest, and making sure that we are all working towards the same goals. So that was a really great and enlightening conversation. And then we followed that up with a conversation about professional development happening throughout the district and trying to see what proposals we could find, what facilitators we could find, especially that have a context of Rhode Island and our district, and being able to implement that for this academic year and subsequent academic years. Shout out to the elementary school principals that will be joining us at our next meeting. And it's great to have representation from all of our schools. And as always, we're always looking for new members. We are going to be talking about mission and vision for the group at our next meeting. So we'd love to see new and different perspectives.
Do you have a set monthly meeting date, or does it change?
It's been changing since we're trying to figure out what works since we have staff and community members all in, and we started taking a poll of those that have been consistently joining us, and it kind of looks like it's going to be after school hours, most likely on Thursdays. Sorry.
That's okay. No, it's like class schedule doesn't allow.
Yeah.
That's okay. You got to find the time that works for everybody.
Yeah, well, we're also opening up, trying to see maybe if could be probably going into like early evening hours just to get more participation.
Ms. Viveros, did you want to add anything?
That's everything.
Yeah,
Cheers.
I have a comment. Wrote this down. Public schools are in simplicity open to the public. It is the right of all Rhode Island residents that said children of the state can receive a public school education. This right encompasses all nationalities equally. It applies to those with varying degrees of special needs. It encompasses all religions equally. The Portsmouth school system has strived to produce a successful educational formula for all. In our society today, it is imperative we continue to be broad-minded to all. The heritage of all parties must be presented in a fair and balanced manner. The core courses preparing students are critical, as well as instilling reasoning and logic. The path that one follows can be varied, but it is the right of the student to choose. It is wonderful that our democracy allows such a right. As a resident of the town, it is humbling to witness the efforts of the school system to provide such an encompassing approach. It is a positive reflection on our community. There is no one right way. It is critical the efforts continue, and should the need arise, the community be drawn on for additional support. Once in a while, credit needs to go where it is due. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, appreciate that. Mr. Shears, you're up next with the report from the Safety Committee.
Okay. All right. Thank you. As the representative from the board to the District Safety Committee, there was a meeting that was held Thursday, October 8th. Members of our administration, police, and fire were in attendance. Discussions were on a range of topics regarding present safety coverage and future items in process and new related safety issues in our district. It was agreed we would meet quarterly in this regard. It is the continuing desire to have a safe, secure atmosphere for everyone. Our first responders are given kudos for their continuing vigilance. Thank you.
Comments, questions? I have a question. On social media last couple of weeks, there's been quite a bit of commentary about concerns about cars passing buses stopped with their lights out, and whether there could be more police enforcement in terms of ticketing. And the other question, and this kind of goes to Mr. Guerrero there too, cameras on buses. And my memory was that we tried a pilot program, is that correct, about a couple of years ago to see if cameras on buses might be a way to identify cars that passed without stopping when the lights were flashing and the stop sign was out?
Yes, we did do that. I believe, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. And the results did come back from the test indicating that there was a lot of that happening. We did meet with the police chief at the time, who's since retired. We did meet with the new police chief as well to discuss how to implement the cameras and the ticketing that goes along with that. But this is the second time that the company that we work with had turnover in the people we were working with, and I could not get responses. I got promises for contracts. And quite honestly, at some point, I felt like the right thing to do was to not move forward with the company, because the last thing we want to do is start to move forward with something like that, and we can't get it completed. But at the end of the day, yes, I think there's absolutely a problem out there. That problem was proven through the test we did. And if the police can up enforcement, that would be fantastic.
Is there any way we can inquire, and maybe this is something for the safety committee to talk about, is there any way that we can inquire with the bus company that, some buses now have these cameras on the side of the buses to take pictures? Is that an option with our current bus company, or is that something that they have, or is it really a third-party vendor that would do that?
Yeah, it's a third-party vendor. They're high-def special cameras. They're linked into software where the pictures and the video are actually reviewed. It's prepared in a way that's acceptable to the Rhode Island Traffic Tribunal and the police department, and so the police only get referrals of true infractions, and then they can look at them on their iPad and they can approve them. I can certainly reach back out to the company again and try to establish contact, but I've had two bad experiences.
Well, and if it's not a good company, we really wouldn't want to work with them. But maybe that's something the safety committee could look into, because I know that's been quite a concern out there in the community.
I also meet monthly with the police chief, and I can make sure we have on our agenda the just enforcement in general from the police department. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Is there any public comments? Let's see if anybody's got a hand up. I'm not seeing any public comment. We have no public with us. So moving on from public comment then, superintendent's update. Dr. Kenworthy.
Thank you, Dr. Copeland. Good evening, everyone. I have quite a few items this evening and a presentation, so I'm just going to move right through. First up, I generally do a personnel update each meeting to welcome any new employees that we brought on since the previous meeting. So I'm happy to report that as of the last meeting, we had hired every teaching position. We still had a couple of openings from the start of the school year that we were able to wrap up by the last meeting. So this evening, I just wanted to present the additional individuals who are helping to round off, the support that we're able to provide to students. So many of these, some of these positions are just also timed up with replacement positions in these areas, but many of these individuals are examples of some of the, temporary COVID-related positions that, we had identified what staffing we were going to need in all different areas. So it's quite a lengthy list this evening, but I wanted to welcome to our district the following custodial new hires. Christopher Goodrow, who will be working at Portsmouth High School, Mark Souza, Portsmouth High School, Gary Hamilton, Portsmouth High School, David Silva, Portsmouth High School. At Hathaway School, Michael Davis, and at Melville, Shane Paquette. And we have a number of new paraprofessionals joining us. Melville School, Anna Resendiz, Portsmouth Middle School, Sarah Fernandez, and Portsmouth Middle School as well, Jackie Reveal, and Melville School, April Fonseca. As you've heard me mention or heard mentioned in updates we've been doing, we moved to a building-based substitute model this year. So instead of kind of having a sub pool and random assignments day to day, we've really tried to line up people who can commit to us to working in certain buildings for the entire school year, and this will be the pool that principals draw on for coverages as they come up. So at Melville School, building substitutes Alexander Pacheco and Kelsey Vieira. At Hathaway School, Laura Sullivan and Amy Olson. Portsmouth Middle School, Michelle Botello, Bente Rayner, and Christine Rainey. And Portsmouth High School, Zoe Hammond, John Visconti, Sue Mays, and Diana Sykes. And then with that, a particular focus on, these are substitute roles, but they're helping, in this case, particularly with distance learning and needs that arise there at the elementary level. So Melville School, Cal Harrington, and that is the only Melville. At Hathaway School, Caroline Heffernan, Kyle Turcott, and Darcy Ryan. Lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge our general school aides. So these are our positions at our elementary schools. They typically help with supervision, lunch, recess, those types of activities. So at Hathaway School, Laura Barth, Amy Budmeyer, Christopher Karuba, Nicole Faria, Allison Gormand, Cynthia McDonald, and Alyssa Morell, and Andrea Purvis. And at Melville School, Wendy Francis, Gina Giannitis, Jessica O'Brien, Rebecca Oliver, Christine Sacco, and Amy Wilt. So, and officially welcoming, in some cases it's calling people back to these positions, but this just helps round off all of the new hires that will help us provide the services and supervision to our students this year.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So let's say nobody's absent at, let's say, Hathaway.
Mhm.
The two building substitutes are still there to help as needed with
Yes.
learning.
Yep. And so the principal will just decide where to deploy them. And in some cases, they may just be an extra set of hands.
So they can float to different grades
Right.
and all that. Okay.
Okay. Next item, I just wanted to acknowledge October has traditionally become a recognition opportunity for National Principals Month. So we always like to take the opportunity and just give a shout out to our four principals, Mr. Amaral at the high school, Mr. Aruda at the middle school, Mrs. Little at Hathaway, and Mrs. Laurie at Melville School. So this year in particular, they have done an amazing job helping us get ready to reopen our schools and everything that has taken. And we could not do what we do in this district without their efforts. So we wanted to officially recognize them in that. Wanted to recognize the efforts of Mrs. Viveras and our tech department. I know Mr. Costa's here off camera as well. Portsmouth was recently awarded a Take It Outside grant by the Rhode Island Commerce Commission. And this was in the initial round, we were one of only 2 school districts to get an award. We received a $55,000 grant.
Well, that deserves.
Kudos to them for their efforts, and this is going to help us. One of the items that we have had on our list over the last few years is being able to kind of upgrade our capability in areas directly outside of our school buildings to be able to provide Wi-Fi. And this year in particular, with an increased focus on trying to get students in classes outside as much as possible, this is going to be a tremendous help. So thank you.
great. That's wonderful.
That's super.
Excellent. If I can just follow up.
Sure.
I really do want to give all the credit to Jake and Steve. They found the grant, they contacted me, they wrote the grant, submitted it. It was, the turnaround time was like a few days. So just amazing, amazing job.
Yay. Oh, well done.
Only two, this was primarily something in the initial round, mostly businesses took advantage of. Again, kudos to Mr. Costa, Mr. Karen. They saw this, jumped on it. We were one of only 2 school districts. Now we have they just put out another round of the grant. So we have a number of school districts who are contacting us looking.
Give us a copy of your
Right,
proposal. Can we apply again?
Don't- Yeah, we can,
Yes.
okay.
Tried to,
Okay,
but
all right.
If there's a third, they said.
Okay.
Yeah.
We only
Why
get
not?
2 shots.
We charge them for advice.
Yeah, consultation fee.
I was charging.
Then next item, I just wanted to recognize Embrace Home Loans is a local business. They are, I believe they're a national company. The Rhode Island headquarters are in Middletown. So they had reached out at the end of the summer to the 3 Aquidneck Island districts and just wanted to provide each district with a donation of masks. This is the mask I'll be wearing. I'll put it back up after I'm done speaking. But this is an example. They are disposable masks. They definitely met all of the proper specifications. So we received a donation of 3,000 of these, and we distributed them to all of our schools, just helping with our PPE efforts. So thank you to them.
Great.
Thank you. Great. Do we send like a thank? We don't really recognize any of these donations formally, I guess.
I do usually send a letter.
Letter
Yep.
or something.
Yep.
Okay.
And we did provide the communication. I think that in I forget which publication, but there was a little
It was in,
story that they did. I think they
Portsmouth
included.
Times or Newport Daily
yeah.
News. I saw the photo. Yeah.
So thank you again to them. And then tomorrow evening, I just wanted to acknowledge myself, Mrs. Viveros, Mr. Amaral, and Mrs. Carl and Claire from the high school administrative team. We are going to join the Little Compton School Committee meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. Virtually. And as everyone is aware, Little Compton students attend Portsmouth High School for high school. So we have this relationship. Mrs. Keenan, I see on here, is a Little Compton School Committee rep, but occasionally we will have additional interaction between our committees or districts. And so they had put out an invitation in the summer looking just for some updates. We were putting the finishing touches on our plans. We had forums that we were doing both at the district and school level. But I did reach out a couple weeks ago and let them know we would be more than happy to do that now. And so they invited us for tomorrow evening. So we are looking forward to that.
There was a question in the chat saying, will there be a link?
Is there a link? So yes, there is a link.
Find it.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's in the public
Yeah.
Rhode Island Secretary of State site.
Or maybe read it. Do you happen to have the link there handy? You might put in the chat, but I probably could find it.
All right, so we will try to grab that link tonight and put it in the chat, as Dr. Copeland said. All right, so next up, I wanted to provide some updates. Mr. Costa, whenever you're ready. And I wanted the last few meetings we have been providing reopening updates, and that's been a big focus. Mrs. Viveros has been doing a lot around those. So, I wanted to kind of officially move away from that title, but you're going to see a lot of this is focused on reopening efforts as well. So, you would just some districts updates that I was putting together, but we also had just sent out a few weeks ago a survey to both staff and families about our reopening efforts. So I thought that I would include those this evening. So as everyone is aware, we are at this point kind of fully reopened according to our initial reopening plans. So as of the week of September 28th, we are fully open every day in person for students who want to be joining us in that capacity, pre-K through grade 6, and in a hybrid 2-day-a-week manner for grades 7 through 12. And then we have still holding steady at about 14% of students who are joining us in all grades through distance learning. So with that, again, once we had a few weeks where we had kind of fully transitioned, we did send out a survey to both staff and families to just try to get feedback on how things are going. So just pulled some of the questions. There were a lot more questions in these, and obviously these are just a sample of responses. Our staff survey had over 100 responses of staff at all different levels. We asked one question on just positive experiences throughout reopening. So we got responses all the way to the amount of PPE that we were able to provide, again, through the efforts of all of the hard work of everybody who contributed to our reopening process, and just how happy staff have been to be able to interact with their students, and thanking families and parents for all of their support. Next question, I just pulled a sample, Steve, regarding challenges. Again, what were some of the key challenges for our staff? We're well aware. I'm going to address some of these throughout the presentation, but we know one of the hardest things for our teachers right now is trying to manage both the in-person instruction and the students who are distance learning, whether that be full-time distance learners or on any particular day. Particularly 7 through 12, they may have some students in front of them and some students who are learning from home. We could have students who are sick, but able to log in through distance learning. So, this is a whole new way of teaching for our teachers. And we just, again, want to acknowledge all of the hard work that is going on their part. We're trying to do everything possible, making sure that we can support them with what it's going to take there to have this be successful. One of the things that I just wanted to address through this presentation tonight, so we had a question in here for both staff and families around a possible transition to full in-person instruction for grades 7 through 12. So on the staff end, you can see overwhelmingly when we asked this question, and we at this point, this was only people who work within the 7 through 12 grade span. In the survey, this redirected them to these questions on in-person opening. So that narrowed it down to about 93 people. You can see the responses there. And I think, again, not that our staff doesn't want to be able to welcome students in these grade spans to more in-person instruction, but Steve, if you go to the next slide, it's really, our challenges are really around health and safety. And throughout all of this and our reopening efforts, our primary focus has been, of course, on the health and safety of our students and staff. And right now, these are the grades, we just, based on the layout of classrooms, the furniture that we were able to utilize in, grades pre-K through 6. That's what is allowing us to stay open every day for full person instruction in those grades. And also the key here is to be able to provide 6-foot spacing between students, which I think everybody knows now that has really become the standard of what is considered safe. And definitely from our staff end, they know that if we were to increase in-person instruction, we would be sacrificing that 6-foot spacing in order to be able to do that. And so we've taken a lot of efforts. We've done everything that we can at this point, following the guidance, taking advantage of everything from fans to air purifiers as we're getting ready for the colder weather, making sure that we have an adequate cleaning and disinfecting protocol. But right now, again, that 6-foot spacing is really key to all of that. So if we were able to, as we start to bring back more students in those grade spans, where we're starting to, we would be doing so at the sacrifice of that 6-foot spacing. So next slide, as we move on to the family survey, I'm going to come back to those questions in a bit. But on the family survey side, we certainly wanted to acknowledge, again, we do have about 14% of our families who have opted for full distance learning. for their students. So this particular question, we did have 449 total responses on the family survey. This section of the survey would have been directed towards distance learning families. This was about 56 respondents of that total. And we're just checking in on with some questions on distance learning, and you can see there some of the responses on the positives and the challenges, which we're all well aware of and trying to work with our staff and our families to make this process as good as it can be for everyone.
Tom,
Yes.
quickly, regarding the third response, they feel disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an opportunity for a child who's in distance learning to change their mind and come in and do in-person learning?
Yeah, so we had a lot of that happening. Again, that I think at one point when we were providing updates to you, we were up to as high as 25%. And then that number, as we approached the start of the year, kept coming down. Again, we leveled off at about 14%. We were as flexible as we could be in the first weeks of school. And we did have a number of families who, really felt that was the way that they wanted to go. But when they started the distance learning process, they realized it was not working. So we did for a few weeks allow families to opt back in. But at this point now, our next point to make a change would be the marking period change. So either the quarters for middle and high school or the trimester mark for elementary.
When is that quarter, do you know?
Yes, the quarter is November 18th. I know that for sure.
So families could then let you know by November
Yes.
18th.
Yep, and we will make sure we continue to communicate that out. Okay, next slide. So again, now this part of the survey kind of was directed through questions for our families that have chosen in-person learning. Of all the survey respondents, again, 393 of those fit this category. So we just asked, very good results here with just a general question on, how are things going? What's your comfort level with students being back in school? You can see there almost 95% of respondents, felt very strongly, positively about that. Next slide, then again, just getting at, again, I don't think a lot of things would be surprises here. What families, parents in particular, saw as the greatest advantages, just that, social interaction, getting back into the regular routines, their students being more engaged, they felt if they were here in person. Next slide, please. So then that question again, redirected particularly toward parents who have students in that 7 through 12 grade span. So asking those questions about whether they would support, you can see it now flips almost completely right from the parent end, which we appreciate. They want their students to be back full in person. But again, as I've been having conversations over the past few weeks, as you start to kind of through those conversations, probe a little deeper with people's understanding. And so one of the questions we asked particularly was, would parents be comfortable with that decision if they knew that 6-foot distancing could not be maintained? So already just among that particular survey pool, that drops to 65% favorable. And then we tried to kind of get at in some additional questions, with just things that families wanted to share with us regarding this question if they had students in this grade span. And so, that first one I pulled as a sample because I think, again, people would assume if we're moving to full in-person, I think they're assuming that 6-foot spacing would still be there. And right now that's our big challenge in Portsmouth in these grades is that we cannot maintain that 6-foot spacing. I think the third bullet here, sample that I pulled, infection rates, they're starting to climb a little bit in our state. Our community, though, our local municipal rates, again, I don't want to jinx anything for us, but we're in a pretty good place at Portsmouth as a community. Our school district, we have not had a positive case. We're one of the few remaining districts. I don't want to do it all, but I have promised that we would communicate out on any positive case. So that hasn't happened yet.
But it has in our neighboring district.
Right, and we are, again, I don't want to belabor this, but we're one of a few districts remaining that have not had a positive case yet. I'm not, part of that is just kind of luck of the draw and where we are. We have all the protocols in place. We know it's probably going to happen at some point. We will be ready, again, with the great work that our staff has done to prepare for that. But I think people, are sensing that and looking at that and seeing, we have low infection rate within our municipality. We haven't had cases here yet. So there is a big push from this contingent of families that want to have their students back fully in person. And we understand that, but we have challenges that we're up against there. So next slide, Mr. Costa, please, brings us to, again, based on those current CDC, Rhode Island Department of Health guidelines, everything revolving so much around that 6-foot spacing, I could not, as superintendent, comfortably make a recommendation at this point that we move beyond where we are for grades 7 through 12 with that hybrid approach. I can tell you that, throughout Rhode Island, although the governor, I think there was some confusion and misunderstanding, the governor put the October 13th date, which happens to be today, out there. I think the intention there was that districts would be fully transitioned with any phase in reopening that they were doing. As of last week, only 3 districts in Rhode Island had any plans. Again, a lot of this, I think, just depends on the layout of schools and the size of a district. There were only 3 districts that had any plans to be able to move to full in-person instruction.
For all grades.
At the high school level, particularly. Yeah. And I know one of those districts had to pull back on those plans because of infection rates in their community. With that, though, we're not saying these next 2 bullets that, we're just gonna stay where we are and not look for creative solutions. So we have already started working in the conversations with our high school and middle school administration teams. Is there any way for us to be able to get more students back in full time if that would benefit those students and their families? In the term that we often hear around that is vulnerable populations. I think a lot of people, when they hear that, assume we're talking about IEP students, but it's not just necessarily IEP students. This could be just students on any sort of a plan, students who just are struggling in general. I think as we approach the change of the quarter, so November 18th ends the first quarter marking period. So right now we are working with our high school and middle school administrative team to identify who are some students that we know are just struggling in general with academically, social, emotionally, with the current hybrid approach. And so we will target as many students as we can within those vulnerable populations at the change of the quarter to be able to bring them back. From there, then I think, anytime that we make a change like that, I think we need to give things a little, a few weeks and a little while to see how things are going, both internally and of course, everything happening with external conditions. So I would think that the next date for any change in what we're doing would be the change of semester or that 3rd quarter marking period, which is February 5th. And so again, just wanted to kind of fully update everyone with where we are with those plans. So lastly, I just wanted to, obviously the big question that we're focused on right now is how we can provide instruction more within that 7 through 12 grade span. And I think, as I indicated, focusing in on those vulnerable populations is where we're going to start. Some other challenges, just things that were definitely highlighted in the survey, but things that we are well aware of. I talked about that, that tremendous challenge right now for teachers, teaching simultaneously to students in person and distance learning. Something they've never had to do prior to the start of this school year. Obviously pre-COVID, the focus was completely on students who were in front of them in their classroom. Even when we moved to distance learning after March 13th last year, everybody was home. Schools were closed, so it was just full distance learning. Now we've really kind of changed the dynamic there, and it's this combination. So just continuing to work with our teachers, trying to provide them with everything that they need to be able to do that successfully. We know the self-attestation form process, is not ideal. We are certainly not the only district that is doing it the way that we are through Aspen, our student information system. It provides us with the ability to do it, but also the key there is the ability to track that information as soon as possible. So by a couple hours into the school day, we are able to run reports. We can see staff or families who have or haven't done it, and there can be the adequate follow-up. I get the challenges that families are having with this. I can tell you in my own household, we have 3 school districts represented. Obviously, Portsmouth. My wife teaches in another district. My children attend the town that we live in is another district. All 3 of our districts are following this process. So every day, my wife and I, did you do the attestation for the kids? Yeah, I get it. Right now, we've looked at other ways to do this. We've looked at apps that are out there, and they right now that this is the best way for us to get it done. We're hoping that Aspen, can help. Again, a lot of districts doing it this way. They are supposed to be working on an app themselves that would be great within that system to be able to streamline this process. As far as PPE, again, I can't again thank enough just our staff, up and down at all levels. I know that there are still districts that are struggling and waiting on Chromebook purchases, for instance. Us in the technology department were out in front of that right from the beginning of the summer. Most of our PPE, again, we've been able to get out in front of it very well. The last thing that we are down to is just waiting on, again, with such increased demand in all these areas right now, the big focus is on the air purifiers. As weather is going to get colder, we have to close windows, those kinds of things. We have both of our elementary schools and the middle school fully outfitted. So the last thing we're waiting on there are some purifiers within the order for the high school, and that will complete our purchases there.
And that will make the air quality, will meet the guidelines for air quality.
Yes, within the internal
for the
circulation.
fall, so we can shut all the
Right.
windows. But if we can, we should keep the windows open.
Yeah, windows open, fans on is definitely the number one recommendation for improving air quality ventilation. You've heard me mention that a few times. One of the challenges there, and we saw it definitely reflected in the survey. Both staff, families also mentioned it. Anytime students do distance learning, I mean, the fans are loud. There's no way around it. Teachers trying to teach, manage those 2 groups. We did purchase microphones for teachers. I believe, right? We're still waiting. So that's another order that we're kind of waiting to complete. But and we've tried to do everything we can to address it. But the purifiers will definitely help in being able to close the windows, and we wanted to make sure we had those in place for the colder weather. I wanted to mention, so this is one that's come up recently. We knew this was going to certainly be something we were going to get out in front of for the holidays season and start communicating. We did also see a little of it bubble up around this past Columbus Day weekend, and again with that, we know we have a number of military families in the district. So travel. So right now we are following, again, the Rhode Island Department of Health guidelines for schools. Call for a 14-day quarantine after returning to Rhode Island from any international travel, that would be a given, but also any travel to a U.S. state that has a greater than 5% positivity rate. Now, there is a link. We're gonna start communicating this information out so everybody has it in anticipation of the holiday season. There's a link that's updated weekly on the Rhode Island Department of Health website. Sometimes states come on and off that list, but this is one, again, we don't really have the leeway to make exceptions to this rule, because if there was ever an outbreak that was connected to one of these scenarios, and the Department of Health found out that we were aware that a family had traveled to a certain area and we did not abide by this 14-day quarantine, they would not look favorably on us, I'm sure. So we know that this is the guidance. This is what we have to follow. That is 14 calendar days. So obviously would be less school days. And if at any point this, so part of this is non-essential travel. We would certainly discourage, but we understand, particularly with our military population, if they have to travel for, certain reasons for where family is and that kind of thing, that if families do that they just understand this is what we will have to put in place, that the 14-day quarantine starts on the day that, somebody returns back to Rhode Island. Students would obviously be able to distance learn during this time period, but we are starting to see this come up a little bit. And we know these questions are probably going to increase around the holiday season. So we just want to make sure everyone is fully aware of those guidelines. I included budgeting and staffing here. Yes.
1 second. Fred?
On that particular item, I read somebody's on the social media. I saw a woman representing her family, military. They just returned from travel. And they'd all been tested, so there's no exception, even if they've been recently tested.
So this is one of the places. So the guidelines for schools, pretty much closely mirror other guidelines that are out there from the Rhode Island Department of Health. And this is where, and I've had conversations myself. I know our principals are having conversations, our nurses, and I understand where some of the confusion is setting in, because as Mr. Ferber is indicating, if you go to the Department of Health website and anything related to travel, it talks about this 14-day quarantine or a negative test. This is one example of where the guidance for schools is different from that. It does not allow for that negative test on the return from travel.
Because as that individual pointed out,
Kind of odd.
Yeah, I think again they're just trying to be as cautious as possible and maintain.
They could do something like a 4-day quarantine and then a negative test. Give it a little incubation period or something.
Can I just add a little add a comment? I mean, I'm obviously not a doctor, but based on what I've read, part of the reason for this is that there's a much higher percentage of false negatives if someone is asymptomatic, and so. Just getting a negative test, particularly when younger populations tend to be asymptomatic more than older populations, getting a negative test doesn't necessarily mean that the person is not is clear. And so I think that's the logic behind this, I would imagine.
Yeah, I can tell you this is one place that the Department of Health has doubled down on, that this difference or exception regarding schools and what's out there for the general public is intentional. I can tell you as of today, we were communicating with the Department of Health on behalf of a family. We were just trying to make sure we had, we were correctly interpreting a situation, and they were adamant that this is what we should follow. So we're just going to make sure that families are aware that this is what's out there.
There was a question from the audience here that says, are we going to have like a dashboard with COVID information? If we do get a case, will it be public, or are there concerns with privacy information? But how will we let the community know if we do have cases?
Yep. So we have again committed to any confirmed positive case within our school community. So student or staff member, we will communicate. Obviously, the first line of communication is going to go to that particular school where something happens. At any point, and I have there are plenty of examples now from other districts who have dealt with situations already. Any point when there is a positive confirmed test related to a school, whether it happening can be directly traced to school or not, Department of Health is going to come in and kind of take over the management of the situation, implement contact tracing, all of that. So they'll have some additional guidance to give us. Then I think I would definitely just communicate something out in general so people are aware. We have definitely kind of drawn the line, as most districts have, that particularly in a district our size, and a lot of families have siblings, in different schools. We will make sure people are aware when we do have a positive confirmed case. Other than that, I have seen examples of dashboards.
We're not really doing testing though.
Yeah, so
you can't really
right. Most of those include other information that just wouldn't be relevant here.
One quick question.
Yes.
Reading ahead in the finance report, I noticed that we're zeroed out on tuitions in and tuitions out. So what's the policy with kids going to different districts this year? They don't.
I actually asked Chris about that line, and he said that just hasn't gotten reported
Oh.
yet in terms of tuition.
Right,
So
so
I was-
kids are going to the districts.
We're going to the
without
districts.
reporting.
They haven't billed us and we haven't paid
Yeah,
yet.
okay.
Yeah. At this point, I think, like we probably wouldn't take at this point in the year a student from another district. Most districts have kind of stopped that process.
Oh.
Hunker down and making
Yeah,
sure you can
because-
deal with what you
right.
got. right?
Yeah.
All right.
There will be additional tuitions as Dr. Copeland mentioned, coming in those lines. We haven't been billed for them yet.
There is another question here in the chat, and it's
Yep.
going back to the opening of schools in 7 through 12.
Mhm.
Just basically saying, with low rates here in town and a pretty high demand, will we consider what's best for our kids? So many are falling off because they're not vulnerable.
Right.
Students in honors classes are also struggling. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're bringing in sort of the vulnerable populations, but they're
Mhm.
not the only struggling populations.
So, and we certainly recognize that. Again, I wish, and even our staff, when I started with kind of the responses on that into the question, it's not that we don't want to be able to welcome all of our students back in those grade spans. It's just we have maxed out, so to speak, on all of our health and safety measures and everything, even creatively that we can think of to do. We just do not have the spacing within the rooms in those grades. Just so everyone's clear, it's a little, here at the high school, it's definitely just the size of the rooms and the spacing and what we'll be able to accommodate. 7th and 8th grade, and the reasons that they're included in this hybrid approach are that right now, 7th and 8th grade at the middle school are sharing the same classroom. So alternating them on different days allows us to be able to take advantage of that kind of double classroom layout. And you've seen in pictures we've shared. If we weren't able to do that, we would be getting into spaces in the middle school that are a little smaller and wouldn't be conducive to the spacing. So again, we're going to definitely start and target those vulnerable populations. I just want to be clear that does not just include students with IEPs. We will look to be able to bring back as many students as we can who are struggling, and I think that that will be our first step, and we'll look for more creative ways. If we can bring more students in, we would be everyone would be happy to do so. We just have to make sure that we're able to do so safely.
And the reason that 7th and 8th aren't full-time is because they're non-stable pods, because they shift for math
Right,
and
so-
language. But
right.
if they didn't shift for math and language,
Yep.
then they would be stable pods, but then they wouldn't be getting that educational differentiation, right?
Right. So yeah, there were a few factors when we looked into that. We could certainly have taken that route, but again, we knew that the best situation there was they share the same instructional space right now, and there was that kind of double classroom layout. So if we weren't able to do that, we would be getting into rooms in the middle school, some of those internal rooms that would not be conducive to the 6-foot spacing.
Alan?
And in 7th and 8th grade, they're completely in on the days that they're in, so that we don't have the same model that we're following at the high school.
So they're all 8th graders are in on 2 days a week.
Right.
All 7th graders are in
Right.
on 2 days a week, and all of them do distance learning.
Sharing the same classroom space at the middle school.
Yeah.
Alan?
I've been known sometimes as a contrarian. I have some comments. First of all, I would like to preface it with the fact that I think the administration entirely has been doing a terrific job before I get rolling here. Okay, the fact is we've been open for around a month. We have said we do not have any COVID cases. We've said that I think through conversation, there might have been one or whatever in Middletown, one or whatever in Tiverton, but we haven't had any. I take the approach that's like saying to a farmer, don't plant your crop because it may not rain next month. In other words, until you get out there and try something and go from it. But how do you know? It's like the sky's falling, the sky's falling. The next thing is educational absorption. So far, I have not heard where there's been any analysis by any tests or whatnot that the kids that are sharing time at the schools on Zoom, the ones that are not. In other words, I would like to see where they really stand. If we're going through this whole effort this year and they're 50 or 60% absorption, then I can't see how that it is very positive. On spacing, I was on a subcommittee, and if you're looking at 6 square feet and you go 6 square feet one way, the other way, you're looking at roughly a 36 square feet per student, plus allowing, let's say, 4 square feet for the body, the desk, whatever. That's 40 square feet. If you have 25 students in a class and a teacher, that comes to somewhere between about 11 or 1,200 square feet. If we have about 1,000 students, faculty, maybe 1,200, whatever, we have a high school building that has a gross square footage of about 200 or so thousand square feet. Yes, the rooms are odd spaced. Yes, the rooms are odd spaced in the usage at the middle school. Yes, the teachers would have to change their programs and all that, but I have yet to hear whereby a physical size of the buildings and the amount of students there are, just by the mathematical formulas, that they cannot fit. I have not been proven that. I just, like I say, I don't understand, unless I'm missing something somewhere on this, that we can't fit them.
Are you including like cafeterias?
Yes, I'm including
offices?
cafeterias, gyms, offices, whatever it might take to get to fit the kids. To me, that's a better situation than having them at home or those classes. And yes, it would be a challenge for the teachers. They'd have to change their programs of what they're doing and their cycles and whatnot. And like I say, I don't want to belittle our administration, because I think that they are really aces. They've gone through fire and more with this whole process. But I think it's time to put our foot in the water a little bit more and see what the temperature is of the water. And we haven't had, it's been a statement tonight, we haven't had one COVID for a month. Okay, and knock on wood, but what are you going to say? I will refuse to go out and cross the street because I may get hit by a car?
Well, Alan, I think you make a lot of good points, but I also think, we're required to meet state guidelines, right? And at first they were talking about 3 feet, right? So in the summer, everybody was planning on 3 feet, and that would have made a big difference. But then they said, no, so they're changing it to 6 feet. So I think when, based on my experience at Bryant, they've bent over backwards to make spaces which are not classrooms.
Right.
And those are rooms like, big conference rooms and the auditoriums. And they've had to invest, so much money just to get the technology in there. Steve's he's having nightmares already, if he had to wire all that up. I think it's more than just sort of saying, put the bodies in the room. You also have to make them suitable for teaching. Because if you're just sitting bodies in a room, it's not going to be suitable for teaching. Carlos?
I've got it's, yes, I think ideally at the end of the day, we want to, yes, have us welcome all of our students back to our classrooms. But I think that I'm not criticizing a little bit, it kind of negates the point that parents have made the decisions that's best for their families. And our district has made every attempt and every accommodation possible. So to just say, hey, let's design these new rooms in order to bring the students back, it kind of negates the point that our families have made the best decisions for their children. And I think that right now we're—
for the 14% that would like—
14%, the 14% that decided to do distance learning have decided that that's the best thing for them.
Right.
And we've done the best for all the other students that have decided to come back into our classroom. So I think that, yes, I could kind of see dipping your toe in the lake, but the problem is that we're still all trying to figure out what that water's like. And that's the dangerous part, because if we just happen to dip our toe in the lake and it just feels really nice, but it just happens to be kerosene, then we're going to run into the problem where, yeah, we do have that one child that just happens to come in, and then we have an infection. And that, I think, is a really important part.
Okay.
The actual point I was going to make was about the attestation form. And Tom, thank you for making the statement about the form. But I would, as a parent that has to fill it out and sometimes fails to do it every day, I think just something, and Steve, and I'm sure that you probably looked into this, something as simple as even having it available on the mobile site will make a world of difference.
Right. They just don't have an app.
Just don't.
Well,
That's the problem.
even if you log in onto the Aspen website through your phone, you get every other functionality except that one.
We know. We have
Yeah.
put that in already as a request.
Yeah, and I would have to, I mean, there's a number of districts doing it this way, like, you know, if we kind of join together and just insisted, I don't know what the holdup is on their end, but,
Design. Capacity, some others, so.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
We have to go.
and then,
You gotta keep helping.
Yeah,
that's it. Last thing, so I didn't include it as a challenge here. I know we've talked about it already, but transportation, because it is working with, you know, we had a tremendous response from our families. Any family that was able to take advantage of any other way to get students to school, I know they've stepped up to the plate. So right now we are making things work. I think even if we were to start bringing more students back, I don't think for us transportation is the obstacle there. Again, we obviously can't get to the point that we were at before all this with full capacity on our buses, but you know, transportation is definitely something we're always watching, but right now it's not necessarily a roadblock to any of the conversation about bringing students back.
speaking of roadblocks though,
Yes.
has there been any commentary about like traffic jams around, you know, like I just happened to drive down past toward the middle school and West Main Road, and traffic was just, you know, that people were waiting to turn onto Jefferson
Melville
Lane there and
or,
all
yeah.
there. And I don't know about Melville, but I mean, have we had complaints about traffic and backup? And I've heard it's
I
gotten
mean, I
better.
know things are
around
better,
schools,
right, than
you
it
know,
was in
but I
the
didn't know
beginning,
about
but
kind of the
yeah, obviously we're
outside.
seeing with that, we're seeing an increase in families that are transporting students, dropping off. I mean, I haven't heard it as
Yeah.
much from schools.
Okay,
You know, I know, obviously
might have just
it's,
been an
yeah,
off day.
there's an increase in the number of families, you know, dropping off or picking up every day, but I think they've,
Yeah.
you know, they've all put good systems in place.
How's the meals program working with grab and go and the?
Yeah, so over the weekend, so it didn't make this agenda, but you know, we've talked already about there was through the federal government, the program was providing, you know, free meals to any student that wanted it. It was going to be through December 30th. They made the decision over the weekend. I saw it publicized. They're going to extend that through the remainder of the school year. So we're just looking to get the details on that, and we'll share that information out. But
pretty amazing.
yeah.
So budget staffing, did you have one there?
Yeah, I mean, I just included that as, you know, not, and we're obviously managing that situation, and you know, we had identified the additional funds, you know, between some money we got from the federal grants and our surplus last year. Again, with between the PPE and the new positions that we've had to bring on, and we will probably get to the level of exhausting those funds that we identified, but we think that we'll be okay in that area. Obviously, but just something that we're continuing to watch. And then, you know, same thing with staffing. We're in a very good place compared to a lot of things that I hear in other districts, but you know, all it's going to take is we hit cold and flu season, and you know, anything else that could happen. So that's just always an area that we're watching as well, just to make sure, you know, with what we have in the building-based sub pool, that it's adequate.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. I know we had asked for like an overview of challenges and things that we're working on, and you certainly still have a lot, everybody has a lot on their plate. So, and it is a tough nut to crack, you know, in terms of balancing risk and reward with bringing kids back. But I know it's not something we're just sitting back and saying, this is it for the rest of the year. Okay, moving on. Can I have a motion to approve school committee minutes, please?
So moved.
Second.
Excuse me, I move for the approval of the minutes of September 20th, 2020 and the executive session minutes of 2020.
Second.
22.
September 22nd.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah. Second.
Adjusting all the other.
So we have a motion and approval for the two school committee minutes of September 22nd. I'll call for a roll vote. Karen McDade,
Aye.
Tom Badney,
Aye.
Mr. Alan Shears,
Aye.
Carlos Payero,
Aye.
Fred Ferber,
Aye.
Emily Copeland, aye, unanimous 6-0. Have a motion for the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, motion, call for a vote. Karen McDade,
Aye.
Tom Badney,
Aye.
Alan Shears,
Aye.
Carlos Payero,
Aye.
Fred Ferber,
Aye.
Emily Copeland, aye, 6-0. Moving on to the business agenda.
Move for discussion and action on the revised contract for the Director of Finance.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Dr. Kenworthy.
Thank you. So this is a revision of a current contract. Many people, obviously the committee is fully aware. Most people in our district and even the public know Mr. Dioro has been for several years, even predates my time in the district, our Director of Finance and Administration. He had informed me through conversations, by the end of the summer that for personal reasons, he needed to definitely step back a little from his current responsibilities. We were able to work out a situation where he will stay on just solely as Director of Finance. And just so the general public is aware, what is being removed is that administration part. So there are a lot of additional responsibilities Mr. Dioro has right now. We've just kind of removed those, so he will solely focus on financial matters. This is going to be a reduced part-time position, but it will help keep him kind of where he brings a lot of value in everything he does, but certainly anything related to finance, particularly as we're about to enter into the budget cycle for next year. So this is a revised contract. It will go through the end of this current school year, can allow us to get through this next budget process. And I think once we kind of get through that, we'll be able to tell whether this current situation is working for everyone.
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Shears?
Sure. Would just like to say that Mr. Deloro has had some excellent contacts in working with various groups that he's cut various deals that have been very beneficial to the school system, and that we've all benefited by his savvy in doing business.
I think we would all second that.
Yeah.
Well said, well said. Okay, I'd like to call for the vote, please. Ms. McDade,
Aye.
Mr. Vadney,
Aye.
Mr. Shears,
Aye.
Mr. Payero,
Aye.
Mr. Ferber,
Aye.
Emily Copeland, aye, unanimous, approved, revised contract for a Director of Finance. Can I have a motion for discussion on action for B, please?
I move for discussion and action on Collier's owner's project manager contract.
Second.
Mr. Dioro.
Sure. I I have a short memo that was attached as backup. I think I'll just read that out loud. So as you know, the district withdrew its original necessity of school construction stage 2 application earlier in the year. The 5-year capital plan was approximately $65 million and would have included significant renovations and additions to our existing buildings. We have received permission from the School Building Authority to resubmit a revised Stage 2 application in February of 2021. Based on discussions with the Facilities Capital Planning Subcommittee and the full school committee, the district would like to move forward and engage the community to develop a revised 5-year capital plan that would include high-impact renovations and warm, safe, and dry projects totaling closer to $10 to $12 million. As such, I am recommending that you appoint Collier as project managers as the district's owner's project manager to assist us in preparing and submitting the revised Stage 2 application. The proposal fee is $40,500 plus reimbursable expenses and would be funded from the school capital projects fund. Attached to the backup was the proposal from Colliers.
Thank you. And just to clarify, RIDE now requires that districts appoint these project managers, correct?
Not necessarily required for submitting a stage 2. They are required in many aspects of the process, but it is very highly recommended.
Okay, and then this stage 2 enables us to get the at minimum 35% reimbursement
Yes,
for all our projects going forward.
Correct. Without this stage 2 application approved, we will no longer be able to collect any housing aid reimbursement, and Colliers will work on our behalf to get as much of that as we can. Minimum is 35%. We hope to do better.
Great. Mr. Shears.
Yeah. Just would like to point out that Colliers has already done preliminary work when we were submitting thinking of submitting the 66 plus project to the state on our school system. So there already is some basic knowledge and a groundwork for working on this area. And the 5-year plan, if we turn out to be a 10 to 12 million plan over 5 years, and then with the percentages, we're looking at potentially maybe $1.5 million, $2 million per year or whatnot as it works out. So we're talking a lot different monies than we were with the last project we were working on.
Correct. This we would not be going out to, it is my understanding that this would not be submitted to bond or anything.
Right.
It would just be funded through annual request to the town in our capital budget. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I have started those conversations with Mr. Rayner. I think they're just looking to see where things go from here once we have the owner project manager in place, and where we eventually land for the actual project.
Okay. All right. Seeing no further questions, call for the vote. Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Mr. Vadney?
Aye.
Mr. Shears?
Aye.
Mr. Payero?
Aye.
Mr. Ferber?
Aye.
Emily Copeland? Aye. Unanimous, 5-0. I don't think, well, go ahead. We'll take a motion on the last item.
Okay, I was going to say the same thing. I'm not sure we need a motion, but anyway, I make a motion to discuss the Transportation Committee findings.
I'll second it.
Dr. Kenworthy?
So I put this on for a discuss only because it's in preliminary stages, but just something that I've been thinking about. So we've talked about a number of contracts that are coming up this year, and our transportation contract is going to be another one. So we have a very busy year in that regard. Our contract actually expired at the end of last year. We did a 1-year extension with First Student. And again, I think that's worked out well for both sides. And, based on all of the challenges that we face with transportation with reopening, I think, again, we're very fortunate. We haven't had a lot of hiccups in that area, but we do have to put that contract back out for bid. I just think that it's been a number of years since we've really looked at our policies related to transportation and our walk zones and everything else that will go into that. So it might be a good opportunity. I know, none of us are looking for additional meetings, but maybe we could bring an ad hoc temporary committee together that could also include some parent representation and get some good feedback. And maybe there are things where we're not even thinking of or aware of, that we would want to target for this next agreement.
Yeah, I really applaud this initiative, just speaking for myself here. I think this is really going to be one of these areas where we're going to have some significant cost increases unless we think about, do we need to do things differently and how we can approach this. I would draw the committee members' attention to this article that was in October 10th, 11th, Newport Daily News. And it's talking about taken for a ride. Fewer Aquidneck Island students are riding buses, but costs continue. I mean, that's kind of an obvious reason why, because we're required to have fewer students on the bus. But what I was very curious about here was that we seem to have so many more bus routes than I mean, granted, we are a slightly larger district, but I think Middletown only has 15 regular buses and 6 for specialized transport.
I
where
saw
think
that in the article.
We're
yeah.
at like 27 buses
Yeah.
or something. Why? And that just seems like a significant number more, even though our districts aren't really all that much
Yeah.
bigger.
We are bigger, as you acknowledge. Again, I don't know the exact numbers. We are a little larger than Middletown, certainly bigger than Newport. I'm not sure. I know Middletown has a different transportation provider. I'm not sure who Newport has. You know,
I think they have Ocean State.
yeah.
Newport
So-
has Durham.
Durham?
Okay, so
Yeah.
and Middletown, I think, has Ocean State. So it's three different providers. I'm not sure how much of that factors in. Newport probably has more of,
Well, they only had 15
Yeah.
buses or something. So, but again, they're a smaller district, but I would encourage with however you're starting to look at this, and I think it's a great idea, do we need to rethink our busing? We do have a policy on what constitutes a walker, what doesn't.
Yep.
And up to now, we don't really enforce that too much,
The bus company does the analytics, right? They're the ones that determine
How many, yes,
how
I
many
think
buses
you're
they
right.
need for the
Yeah,
routes.
I think this particular year we worked more closely with them than even in years past because we had the capacity issue on buses. But at that point, Mr. Dioro, I think the number of buses was probably already dictated by the previous contract.
Yeah, the number of buses, yes, we have the same number of buses and have had the same number of buses over the course of this contract. I think, Dr. Copeland, you're correct. We don't really enforce our walking distances, so we have more students riding. Now, there are a lot of reasons for that. Some of it could be safety. We have West Main, East Main. But I think that's absolutely something that a transportation committee would have to dive into and determine if any changes that we may or not need to make.
Yeah, and I think there are other districts that require families to opt into busing versus
Right.
assuming everybody, like if you look at the high school buses,
Yeah.
they're and even in non-COVID years, they're pretty
Right.
much empty.
Yeah, this
right?
was the first year that we ever did that. We did it obviously because of COVID and the capacity, but we've laid the groundwork for it now. So maybe it would be something
Yeah,
that would come out of these discussions.
I think that's a great idea. I also I brought 2 newspapers and one was in today's Newport Daily News. This was actually in the Providence Journal, which featured Hathaway. I don't know if everybody saw this.
Over the
And
weekend.
Rhode Island Teacher of the Year, Ashley Adamson was featured in there too. So it was just,
Yeah.
it was some really nice publicity for the schools and I'd recommend people taking a look at that. But I think that's great. So when are you thinking of starting this transportation committee up?
I will get the ball rolling. Again, it's a lot of balls in the air right now, but we'll see if we can get this group together.
All right. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, are there any rules on how long a child is on a bus? You have to get to school in X number of minutes, or anything like that? Because geographically, we are
Yeah.
the largest.
I don't know if you heard that question, Mr. Dioro. Is there an actual rule on how long a child can be on a bus? I know in 60 minutes or an hour is usually thrown around, but I don't know if that's a hard and fast rule or regulation anywhere.
Drive to Providence and back.
But some of our out of district placements that factors in. So, but I think that's all. I see Dr. Cole is nodding her head. That's the only number I ever hear.
Yeah, that's the only number I'm aware of as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that doesn't really factor into our in-district
Okay.
routes, but
Oh, darn.
yeah.
All right. Seeing no other comments, I lost Karen McDade, but I'm not hearing her. Okay.
I'm still here.
Okay, no, you just disappeared from my screen up there, so.
Oh.
So she can't unmute.
Who can't?
Lisa, I think she's trying to.
Lisa, Dr. Caldwell,
Follow.
would you like to say something?
Oh, well, it's okay now. Mr. Dioro took care of it, but it was about the transportation. There is some language about that. So, yes.
Okay, an hour, good. All right, thank you. All right, moving on to financial reports. We don't need to vote on these. We are just accepting them. Mr. Dioro, do you want to introduce them, please?
Sure. So I'm happy to report that these reports that you have are the first reports that are generated out of our new financial system. I know you are aware, because I've mentioned it many times, that we did spend the better part of the last year converting over the district's HR, payroll, purchasing, budgeting, general ledger system from an older legacy system to a much more modern system. That has been in place as of July 1 and fully functioning. Hopefully the reports look fairly similar. They're a little bit different in the formatting, but they should be familiar to you. You have July, August, and September 2020. Clearly, that's the start of the new fiscal year. There's not very much activity. I expect it to certainly ramp up much more in the coming months. As of right now, our financial situation looks pretty good. But again, we're early, and I know everybody wants to see a coronavirus expenditure report, and I promise to have that at our next meeting in great detail.
So I know that I personally had to email Mr. Giro with some questions because I wasn't understanding these, some of the, not being an accountant, I wasn't understanding some of the new layouts here. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Rodney.
I'll pick an example on page 3 at the bottom, graduation supplies. And at the end, it says negative 5.86 or 88%.
You're talking page 3 of the actual report, not the.
Yeah, the report itself.
Okay,
yeah, not the PDF. And I was just curious, I guess on the old reports, that would be in parentheses. I'm wondering how you get to that minus, 5.88%.
So, Mr. Vadney, which page are you on?
It's line item 56113.
Okay, and which month are you on? Because
I think it's the first one, Chris.
First one.
Yeah.
It's just an example, because I noticed that some negative numbers are represented in parentheses, and that one is represented as a negative number.
Sure. So I see it there now. So what's happening there is, after the year end was over, there was apparently one of the checks that were cut against the graduation supplies was voided, and the money was put back into the line, but it is now in a new year. So essentially, instead of having an $8,500 budget, it's now a $9,000 budget, because it has the $8,500 from this year and the $500 that was voided from the prior year.
All right, so it's okay.
Yeah. And for me, it was new because the other reports don't like the parentheses.
Yeah.
That means it's revenue coming in, which that wasn't the way it was reported on the other ones, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can certainly talk on that, because that is a big change, Dr. Copeland. So on the revenue report, the old system reported revenues as positive numbers. In the accounting world, revenues are actually negative numbers, or what we call credits. So in the new system, you're actually seeing the true sign of revenue, which is a negative number, which may be sort of counterintuitive. So don't look at it as if we have negative revenues. We have positive revenues. They're just shown as negative numbers.
Okay.
That took me that.
Okay, that explains the minus.
Yeah, and that's why.
5.88. Okay, all right.
Other questions?
Any other question? Yeah.
More of a comment.
Okay.
Chris, as someone that looks at budgets a lot, this is amazing. I haven't had a chance to say this to you, so it's been really clear, and I think I'm getting a better understanding of what we are looking at budget-wise than we were previously. So kudos to you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of work. Hopefully, it's going to give us a lot of ability. As you guys have more questions, we can really dive into the data now and do a lot more analysis. So I'm going to be very happy to bring that forward to you in the future.
So is the goal, like, I know now you can sort of put encumbrances in. So would the goal be kind of at the beginning of the year to sort of say, we know salaries are going to be X, and just to show that from day one and then kind of where we're at? Or is that not what that encumbrance is going to be?
No, it is. So with the old system, we could encumber salaries for people that were hired.
Yeah.
Now we have the ability to encumber salaries for open positions, as well as variable hour employees. Not all. So for example, I'm not going to encumber coaching salaries or stipends, I should say, because I just don't know if we're going to have sports and what's going to happen. So I'm not going to do that, but I can encumber regular salaries. What I can also do is I can also encumber now all the benefits. So if you look down and you look at healthcare and you look at dental and retirement, you're going to see that those items now are fully encumbered and represent, based on the employees we have and the employees we expect to hire, what that's going to cost us. So yes, to answer your question, our hope is probably not at the beginning of the year, but as we ramp up and we get the full employment, hopefully by the time we get to October, November, we should have a really, really accurate picture of what our financials for the year will look like.
Great. Other questions? Okay, I'm sure this will be an ongoing question and answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Diagram with all the parts in.
Sorry, Tom?
He'll have all this time now with all those other responsibilities.
Yeah, have it there.
Around with this great.
Right. Mr. Vadney, did you have a question? Did I interrupt?
Oh, no, I was just going to say maybe we should have a little PowerPoint with the tutorial on how these are constructed and
How to work them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Vadney was saying, maybe at some point we'll do a little deeper dive once everything gets filled out to kind of make sure we understand it. I do think it's important that we.
Yeah, just a few example lines. Say this is what this line means.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much. No, we don't need to approve that. We just received it. So prior to adjournment, I'd just like to note that we have meetings coming up on October 27th and November 17th. If you joined us late, the district is going to be posting on the website the town council procedures for appointing a community member to fill our vacant school committee position. And the deadline for those applications is November 13th. So encourage everybody who's watching to kind of spread the word and hopefully think about doing this as your community service activity. So with that, can I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Mr. Vadney?
Aye.
Mr. Shears?
Aye.
Mr. Payero?
Aye.
Mr. Ferber?
Aye.
And Ms. Copeland, aye, unanimous 6-0. Thank you all very much for joining us and hope you have a good evening. Night.
Thank you.
Night.